Welcome back from lunch, everyone. We're happy to see all your shiny faces, and looks like we have most of our committee back, but we do have a quorum, so we're good. Before we start, we just want a couple things we forgot to mention. Today is Wyoming Day, and we should probably, this is Wyoming's birthday, we should probably mention that. Representative Western brought it up, so let's give it up for Wyoming. And then I know Co-Chairman Newsom also talked a little bit about the YM and their luncheon that they offered in their testimony this morning, but I just wanted to also reiterate what a nice luncheon, and we're so tickled pink that they invited us over to Arts 321. Did I say it right? Hopefully. And appreciate all that they do for our cultural resources in Wyoming. So with that, I think Director Glenn wanted just a few seconds before we start with Patrick, and so I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Dave Glenn, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources. You know, I know we're going to be talking about the Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund, but this is a legacy type of project, something that we're incredibly proud of, and I think you all should be proud of as well, so thank you. And I also want to thank Patrick and Chris. Since this bill has passed, they've rolled up their sleeves. They put a lot of energy into making sure this trust is set up right. And that's the key piece, right? To start it right. We've had a lot of great advice from Director Bob Budd and others, but how we roll it out is going to be critical. And I know Chris and Patrick's guidance, I know it will be successful. And with that, I'll pass it on to these guys. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Patrick Harrington, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us everything you want to tell us about the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman, Madam Co-Chairman, members of the committee. Patrick Harrington, Manager of the Wyoming Office of Outdoor Recreation. I'll admit, though there's 30 minutes on the agenda today, I hope you all have some questions, because I'm sure this update won't take all that long, but certainly we'll be happy to answer any questions you have about our program. And want to thank you all for joining us this morning at Edna Kimball Wilkins. As you heard from some of our partners, we've been busy. Our office has been busy investing in the collaborative work across the state. Some of that you heard this morning. There'll be many more pieces of good news coming out of those groups in the short term. And then we've been working really hard on grant programs, both through some funding from the Office of Tourism and Director Schober, and through the ARPA dollars granted to us a handful of years ago, finally getting some of that money out the door, and hope we can make announcements on that relatively soon. As just a heads up for the committee as well, you all should have received invites to the Governor's Match, which is here in Casper next week. So if you want to know if you can shoot better than Chairman Newsom, this is your opportunity. So all of you are invited. There's a legislative panel and an opportunity to shoot with some friends from the National Shooting Sports Federation. So with that, I'll hop into my update. As you know, the effective date on this bill was for grant making is July 1 of 2026. So it's more of an update of where we've been since the last point we all had a chance to talk. Again, as a reminder, the legislation that you all passed in the last session was a $6 million biennium appropriation. I guess that was the year before, but that's an ongoing appropriation from the Office of Tourism Special Projects and Reserve account. And that's what's funding the grant until it reaches $200 million. So to date, and by way of an update, we've received $0 in federal grants into that account, the initial $6 million appropriation, and 0 other contributions to that account. But there have also been no grants made from that account because the statutory language does not allow us to. And as you'll hear, there's still quite a bit of work to do to get that ready for prime time. As we sit here today, I guess as of yesterday, July 9th, that account is sitting at $6,234,312.53. So it's earned, about $235,000 in interest just in the last year. That last appropriation was made July 3rd of 2023. And then again, as a reminder, the legislation that passed in the last session allows that $6 million deposit into the account to be split. $4 million goes into the trust account, and $2 million enters the income account to be made available immediately for grant making during the course of that biennium. So our projection looking forward for this fund, we expect another deposit into that account of $6 million in the coming weeks. And so projecting forward, we think probably between $3 and $4 million available on July 1st of 2026, available for grant making. Obviously, this is going to be dependent on when that deposit enters the account and how the larger economy does. So an update on the board. I know you heard from Director Budd yesterday on the nature of his board being a working board, and I think we are obviously trying to emulate that as closely as possible. And so we're working right now to help generate some support, generate applications. The applications for the board are available on the governor's website now. We are sort of expecting around this fall for those announcements to be made. We're also working to determine to what extent that board can act until they are Senate confirmed. Ensuring that that's a broad spectrum of user groups, geography, and skill sets, making sure that we hit all the marks established by this committee in the statutory language. But we're really excited to get to work with them. You guys heard Director Budd say how impactful his board is in making sure that good projects happen, and I think we're looking for that exact same thing. A group of partners that will really help us transform what is possible in Wyoming's outdoor recreation economy. So a bit of an update on rulemaking, and as the director mentioned, Deputy Director Floyd and I have been meeting with the Natural Resource Trust Fund over the last couple of months, and big thanks to Director Budd and Hillary Wasserberger for opening their doors to us, opening their filing cabinet, sharing rules, sharing best practices with us. So again, our goal is to duplicate that as closely as possible wherever it makes sense. And I think you'll see quite a bit of overlap once those rules are rolled out and argued over through a public process. Again, we really do thank them for welcoming us, looking for overlap with us, and truly saving us countless hours in figuring things out the hard way. It's great that they're celebrating their 20th year as we come into our own early stages of maturity, because I think that really does save us a lot of time and hard lessons learned. And so again, as soon as possible, that rulemaking process will begin. Those rules are going to have to be approved first by the board and then by the Attorney General's office. That is a public process. It's our intention to ensure that it's an extremely public process with multiple opportunities to engage in those rulemaking decisions. And again, some of that statutory language really creates protections for things like wildlife in that rulemaking process to ensure that we're as sensitive as possible. And as promised, Madam Chairman, it will be a short update, and so that's what I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead, Senator Jones.
Madam Chair, Mr. Harrington, I'm sorry, could you go over again about the board process, and will we get the names ahead of time for that?
Mr. Harrington?
Madam Chairman, Senator Jones, I might have to phone a friend for whether or not you guys will see a copy of that list. My understanding is that it's the governor's discretion to staff that board, and it's done through an application process. And that's the piece that is live now, is that application process. If either of you have a better answer.
Madam Chairman, Senator Jones, these positions will be confirmed by the Senate as well. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Yeah, I'll tag on to that because I had the same question. I assumed that the process eventually would end up in the governor's office, because that's how the Wildlife Trust Fund was set up. But I'm just wondering if you've had folks already reach out to you from different areas of the state, what kinds of stakeholders maybe you're thinking about, or maybe you've reached out to other people. Could you maybe talk about that for just a little bit?
Yeah, happy to, Madam Chairman. We have had folks reach out to us mostly with questions of when and how can I apply. So what we've done there is collect those lists of names, and this is well before the beginning of this fiscal year when the act became valid. But We collected those names and then just let folks know that the application process is open. When we get these questions, we're directing them to the governor's website for those application materials. Yeah, hope I answered your question.
Sure. And just to follow up, and then I'll get to, somebody had their hand up, maybe, I'm seeing things. Just to follow up to that, I know I've had some questions already. People have asked, what's the application process going to look like for grants and that sort of thing? Proposals, I said, well, you're way ahead, but maybe you could talk about that for just a brief moment.
Yeah, happy to, Madam Chairman. I think a lot of this will be the result of the rulemaking process. And so, again, it's our goal to emulate the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund as closely as possible. You know, I know Director Budd mentioned to this committee yesterday that twice a year grant cycles, obviously there's some real benefits to doing that. But really all of that's going to be hashed out in that public rulemaking process. And if I can go back, I realized I didn't totally answer your question. Those folks that have reached out to us on applications for the trust fund have really been a broad spectrum of user groups across Wyoming. I think what we will see is a broad representation, knowing that the statutory language says we must do that. I'm sure we will see that. And there's a couple of hallmarks in there, like the sportsman, wildlife hunting, angling perspective, private land ownership. It was spelled out in that legislation, and so we will obviously hit that mark.
Other comments? Yes, go ahead, Madam Co-Chair.
Just a comment, the application process, so if you go to the governor's website and then you click on boards and commissions, and then you search for the Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund Board, and then you can apply through that online.
Other questions from the committee? Just one, oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Deputy
Madam
Director.
Chair, Chris Floyd, Deputy Director, State Parks, Cultural Resources. Just want to say too, the representation is by judicial district as well. So you have to keep that in mind. So there's a little bit of a balancing game that has to take place there by geography and then also by their interest and expertise. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to develop a good board, and we'll have several different options in the different districts for people who are interested. But just that's something to keep in mind as well.
Other comments or questions? I just have one more. I know you mentioned that you had probably reached out to Mr. Budd, and I know we did a lot as we were preparing the legislation, and it was so helpful. And I know you have your regular jobs, but I'm just wondering what kinds of advice that he gave you that maybe you could share with us.
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, happy to share. Like I mentioned, we met early on in our process, trying to understand where they're, to gather those copies of their rules and to get their application materials to try to emulate it. We received, quite a bit of advice on best practices, things about, how to look through a project, what you're looking for to ensure that a project kind of meets muster. A lot of that is done in our outdoor recreation collaborative. So, like I said, we're trying to match it wherever it makes sense. But there just are some structural things that are going to be different here. And while the collaboratives aren't going to be the only pathway through, we know through our work that they're a great way to develop a project. And so there may be other ways that we do some of this ground truthing, but that was one of the real pieces of advice from Director Budd that stuck in my head was, to ensure that public money, the money that's in this account is spent to its best possible use. He has a 7-to-1 return on investment of his state dollars. And I think some of that comes from just knowing that you're spending your money in the right place. I'm sure there's multiple other pieces of advice, but I think what's most important here is that relationship with WNRT, it wasn't terminal, and we'll continue to work closely with them as we move forward. They're there and have opened their doors to us for questions, and so we'll keep using them as a resource.
Did you have something you wanted to follow up with, Deputy Director?
Madam Chair, Director Budd has just been so helpful, very responsive. Hillary, too. We've had a lot of questions. We sat down with them. We've had some emails back and forth, and like Patrick said, that's going to continue. I'm just so impressed with the processes they have in place and how well they work. And there's no reason for us to completely reinvent the wheel. They've got a way of doing things. They've got matrices and rubrics for scoring and all that kind of stuff. We can take a look at that and use that as an example. But this board will still have an opportunity to make create its own culture, create its own ways and everything through the rulemaking. But we're just fortunate to have the Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund as an example for us to draw from.
Other comments? I just, again, want to thank you for all the work you've done ahead of time. Like I said, I know you have other things you could be doing in your regular jobs, your 9-to-5s, or no one works 9 to 5 in that outdoor rec, I know that. Oh, Senator Garou, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead, jump in there.
Thank you,
We'd like
Madam
to hear
Chair.
from you.
No problem. And Patrick, I had a question for you about, you talked about ARPA dollars, and we know that the timeline is starting to run short on that. And so could you just give me a little more color on where we are with that? And do you have any projects that you think will make deadline as far as getting all the necessary easements and things that are necessary to let go of those dollars?
Mr. Harrington?
Madam Chairman, Senator Garou, thank you for the question. In the first round of ARPA, it was incredibly challenging to qualify projects. I know I've actually sat in this exact room looking at you all talking about this, and so I won't belabor it, but in our first round of ARPA, we were able to appropriate $2.6 million to projects. Again, these are very narrowly constrained to qualified census tracts or areas of disproportionate impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, and so incredibly tight rules. What we did then is kind of look ourselves in the face and say, how do we improve this process? How do we reach out to partners and get projects developed, or find these projects that are already, already there, they're just missing the funding. How do we find those, bring those up, and then get an application from those partners? So we just jumped into these communities, started reaching out and saying, what have you got? Can we help you along the way? In round 2, we entered about $48 million in applications. In that first round, it was about $72 million in applications. And again, only 2.6 came out of that. We're looking at now, it's still too early to make any announcements. We're still working on contracts, but we do have some approvals through the portal and are looking at about $17.2 million in round 2 projects. And so what that'll leave us is spending at right about $20 million. I'm sure you all will remember, but we were appropriated about $24 million, though I understand the governor has some latitude to reappropriate these funds as needed. So I think we'll come in at about $20 million, knowing that endpoint, as you said, Senator Garou, is fastly approaching. I think what we'll end up spending is about $20 million across Wyoming, and these are truly high-impact projects going to the people that really will benefit most from these state dollar investments or federal dollar investments. And so we're excited about it, and I think we'll see in communities, in these communities, some real solid impact. So,
Any follow-up, Senator?
Yeah, if I could, as we get to the deadline, and maybe for our September meeting, if it's possible, and I don't know what the chairs have in store for that meeting, but if there's any lists out there of money that is going out, that would be, if anything can be generated, that'd be great to see it at that point, at least at where they are in the process, or how far along they are, just so we can track that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then just lastly, my last question, I hope, for me, because I'm kind of bantering you a little bit, but once we get the rulemaking and we get ready to run and open the gates and turn loose, do you anticipate that marketing and making sure that people know about the trust and what's available, that it won't just fall on your shoulders, that maybe we can get Office of Tourism and others maybe to help out with that sort of thing, or have you thought about that long range?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't know that we've specifically had those conversations yet, knowing that we've got a bit of time, but I lead an interagency outdoor recreation team of multiple state agencies. The Office of Tourism is one of those. I anticipate this being a topic of conversation there, so I'm sure we'll see some of that. We've got a PIO office internally, great partners at the Game and Fish. So the word will get out, and I think we've got these collaboratives, so news is going out through them, but we know we're not also representative of the entire state in that. And so there surely needs to be some outreach done into those communities that don't have collaboratives to make sure that they're getting an equal share here, and at least the same chance at getting these dollars. And so there'll be a concerted effort to spread the word sort of as soon as we're ready to do so.
And Deputy Director, go ahead.
Madam Chair, going off something Patrick just said, there are some communities out there that don't have our outdoor recreation collaboratives yet, but we're working on that and we'll get there. And the goal is to have a working collaborative in every community statewide by the time this trust fund is able to put money on the ground. The other thing is we certainly want to get the word out, and a lot of that will be done through the collaboratives and through our partnerships and other agencies and whatnot. But another thing to keep in mind is that I don't think we're going to have any trouble spending this money at all. I think it's going to be dramatically oversubscribed. Now, that'll probably dwindle over time, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see north of $20 or $30 million in requests the first time around for $3 or $4 million in funding. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Any other questions for either the deputy director or Mr. Harrington? Okay, great. Thank you so much for all the information, for the update. We appreciate it. At this time, since it's just an update, we're not doing anything. Do we want to have that comment?
Madam Chairman,
Do-
we have
Is there
one
somebody
person
online?
online.
Okay, sure. Yep, bring him forward.
Kelly Ravner, if you can turn on your mic and your camera, please, and you can go ahead and provide public comment.
Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe I talked too long today.
Hi, I'm sorry. I had some problems with my settings here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like us to hear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kelly Ravner. I live in Pinedale, Wyoming, and I welcome more outdoor recreation and more tourism in Wyoming, and I want to see those dollars benefit the entire state. But right now, I believe that all advertising for Wyoming is facing a mighty stiff headwind. I know that many people have been hoping that the wolf incident in Daniel would just fade from memory, but I'm not sure you all appreciate what an impact it really has had. Back in mid-May, I was up late preparing my comments for a Sublette County Commissioners meeting, and I happened to click on an Instagram live stream. It was about a young hand-raised wolf from an educational facility in Canada that ended up somehow at a neighboring Bible camp where this very friendly little wolf pup was put on a leash, paraded in front of children, and then shot in the head. As I listened to the live stream, I saw comments pouring in. And no matter how many times the streamer said Canada, Saskatchewan, Canada, Bible camp in Canada, 9 out of 10 comments coming in were spewing hate for Wyoming. People hear of a wolf killed in some horrible way, and they think of Wyoming. That is now our brand. So now every time someone makes a spectacle of killing a wolf, people remember the gut punch they felt when they saw those photos and videos of that young wolf in Daniel. Normal, psychologically intact people around the world see those images from Daniel and are deeply disturbed by them. They wonder why what happened there wasn't a felony. And so now it doesn't matter if they hear Idaho helicopters, Montana governor, Colorado trapper, Canadian Bible camp. When those phrases are followed by killed a wolf, they think of Wyoming and they feel sickened. Those images from Daniel have had an impact the likes of which most advertising agencies can only dream. So until Wyoming officials make a good faith effort to change their laws and make what happened to Daniel both illegal and punishable with significant consequences, I believe that the effects of any advertising dollars spent on tourism are going to be greatly diminished. I believe that the damage done to our image is going to be difficult to repair, but that it needs to be addressed first through legislative, through legislative protection for wolves and other predators, And then you can believably advertise a happy image of fun family experiences to be had throughout Wyoming. Thank you.
ma'am. Appreciate your testimony. Again, talking about this trust fund, even though I think you kind of alluded to the fact that it might have an impact, I think we have a working group and we have a committee that is invested in trying to come up with some good ideas and solutions for that situation, but we are moving forward. And I think with our Wyoming Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust Fund and all the good things that we do in Wyoming, hopefully people will see that and understand that we want what's best for Wyoming wildlife and Wyoming. So thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else online? Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we will move on to our next guest officially. Director Glenn, we'll turn the time over to you and Deputy Director, and away you go.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I hope you enjoyed the tour this morning. And special thanks to the staff who put that all together. I recently moved to Cheyenne, and I've been doing my civics homework and calling people in my Senate district and interviewing them and asking them why I should vote for them. And one person that I talked to in particular brought up state bureaucracy and lazy state employees. And I think with all of the tours that you all have been on with our staff, I think you can see that we're kind of the antithesis of bureaucracy. We work to find ways to get to yes. We're doers, and I'm really proud of the staff for doing that. You kind of stole my thunder, Madam Chairwoman, but the tagline on our logo states, arts, parks, and history. And we saw a park this morning. We talked about the arts and had some good things. And then again, happy Wyoming Day. Happy Statehood Day. It's Wyoming's 134th birthday. Nick gives his apologies. Nick Nealon, Deputy Director, he's actually in DC, got some federal money to fly out to really focus on meeting about the semi-quincentennial coming up. And Sarah Sheen, the other deputy, was planning on being here, but just couldn't make it due to some personal issues. So they apologize for that. And obviously we have Chris here, our Deputy Director, and I'll dive right in, and I'm gonna be very brief. Hot Springs State Park, quick update. We're in the process of negotiating the contract with the new concessionaire. That's the next step. So our district manager, Brooks Jordan, is really focusing on what is going on there and working with them. And we hope to have a contract completed by the State Parks Commission, Cultural Resources Commission meeting in September. So that's where we're sitting at. And I failed to introduce a couple of new folks that had showed up in the room that weren't at our morning discussion. Linda, if you could, I'm not going to turn around because after every meeting, we sit down and give each other feedback. And apparently last time when I turned around and introduced folks, nobody could hear on the microphone. So I'm going to, if you can just raise your hand. Linda works in the Outdoor Recreation Office, and she has the coolest job in the world. She is a seasonal, and her job is called a Pathfinder. And what she does is go to high-impact tourist areas such as EKW or other places, and tourists that are coming through, she helps them plan their trip throughout the state and involves it around outdoor recreation. So if somebody's horseback riding and they're coming through the state, she will tell them all the campgrounds that allow horseback riding, all the good trails. If they're mountain biking, if they're taking their ATV and going up in the Bighorns, that's her job. And I want that job when I retire. I think that's a great job. Christina Bird is here from the Laramie District Manager. And then we also have Leslie Stewart, who showed up. She's another State Parks and Cultural Resources Commissioner, sitting next to Commissioner Angela Emery. And we also have Burt Miller here, who is on the Trails Council. So thank you all for being here. Moving on, talking about visitation. On the drive up last night, I made some phone calls, and when I stopped, I sent a text or two. But Buffalo Bill State Park, and this might be interesting to you, Representative Newsom, they're running about 10% over last year right now, and they're on track to have the busiest summer yet, which is a big deal since that COVID year was such a shot through the roof. But Dan says they're busier than they've ever been. Boyson State Park's running about 5% over last year. Interesting thing about that, John Bass, the superintendent, says it's busier with more boaters, and that the boat ramp parking lots are overflowing every single weekend. Kirk County State Park's tracking down about 2%. It's been really cold down there. With this weather coming up, Adam, as the superintendent's pretty confident that they're going to make that up pretty easy. Glendale State Park, it sounds like we're tracking very comparable to last year at this point in time. And then some really neat news and interesting news, Quebec One, it's our newest national landmark in the state of Wyoming. We received some sponsorship from Visit Cheyenne office to offset the cost of 4 billboards. So if you're coming in on I-80 either way, or I-25 either way, about 30 miles on either side of Q1 are some really interesting billboards. Take a look at them. If you're driving south, it's right as you're hitting Wheatland. And if you're driving north, it's just as you're leaving Cheyenne. But it's got a skull and crossbones, and just from those billboards, our visitation's up about 56%. And we're getting, on weekends, 100 people a day, which is fantastic for us at the Q1 site. We're very excited about that. And we've also partnered with Visit Cheyenne office to offer trolley tours to the site. So people can hop on a trolley in Cheyenne and drive out to visit Q1, which hopefully we can get you to in the September meeting as well. If you haven't been there, it's really cool. Shooting Range Task Force, was there any update given yesterday on the Shooting Range Task Force? Okay, maybe I can give a quick update. One of the things I would say first off is I think the governor hit a home run on picking the members of that task force. I'm fortunate to have the opportunity to sit on that, but everybody brings a different perspective and has a lot of thoughtful ideas, and we have very, very good debates and discussions as we move forward with that. The candidate communities have now been narrowed down to Park County and Campbell County. We're doing site visits next week, and we hope to make recommendations of site placement to the governor by August 13th. And I believe it's TRW that will probably carry that moving forward. Great. One of the things that I was acting director for almost a year, and a lot of folks are always saying, Dave, what's your vision? What do you want? Where are you going? And I really felt as acting director, my job was to keep the rubber on the road. My job wasn't to focus on vision. It was to make sure that we're moving things forward. But right now, we're really focusing on creating a new strategic plan. It's going to be a 5-year plan, and we're going to work on it from the ground up at the same time as we're working on it from the top down. So every staff member, public will have opportunity to share ideas and give input through roundtables, through surveys, through meetings, all those types of things. Managers will be meeting, talking about those types of things as well. So while I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, I know we're going to have some things that we're going to really focus on. And one is reducing silos within our own agency. It's an incredibly diverse agency. I always use grants as an example. We have several different granting programs. They don't talk to each other as much as we should. So we should be talking more and working together, being more efficient on those types of things. We had our first annual meeting, I've talked about that, where we brought all staff together, and it was awesome to sit down and listen to these folks go, hey, we can help you with that, or we need help with this, can you help us? So I think we're gonna really focus on that, but we're gonna focus on service, education, preservation, and people. And frankly, our culture of being dedicated, welcoming, accessible, efficient, and fun. That's who we are, we're fun. One last couple things, and then I'll dive into Sarah's notes. The Arboretum, update on that. As you know, the legislature put in $3.5 million towards the Arboretum. The bill to make it a state historic site failed. That will probably come back up, I'm assuming, I don't know. But we are right now working on an MOU with the city of Cheyenne. And we've entered into an agreement to spend some of that $3.5 million with a company to do a facility condition assessment. And one of the neat things they're doing is they brought UW students in. They're going to be doing 3D scans of all the buildings for us. We're working on that strategic plan. And then after the MOU is completed and after the strategic plan is completed, we'll then work with everybody, all the members, to prioritize projects to spend the rest of that $3.5 million on. On the cultural resources side, there was a supplemental study done on the Safeway lot, which is just west of the Capitol, because that was one spot that wasn't looked at. And that study is completed right now, and all I had the notes was that it was completed, so I texted Sarah real quick and said, what does it say? And her words were, it's a decent option with a few issues that limit placement of the building. That's all I know right now, but that information will be coming to you all as well. There's a Family Days event this Saturday called Dino Days, one of the most popular days at the State Museum, where hundreds and hundreds of kids and families come and show up. I was fortunate to MC Governor Meade's portrait unveiling on the 27th, and it was pretty powerful, frankly, to be sitting in the Capitol and have many former governors sitting there and speaking. And when the picture was unveiled, as you know, his grandfather, Clifford Hansen, was a governor as well, and it's him sitting in the same chair that his grandfather was. So next time you're in the Capitol, please take a look. It's a wonderful portrait. The semi-quincentennial planning for events on the 4th of July, 2026 are happening. Representative Newsom, thanks, and Senator Schuler, thank you for all of your help with that. And then lastly, State Historic Preservation Office has put together a preservation plan, and they have to do this every 10 years. So in 2026, we're working on the 2016 to 26 plan. We're starting to work on that now. It's a statewide plan. It guides the action that sets priorities, challenges, and goals of preservation activities in Wyoming through 2037. And when we talk preservation, it's all kinds of things. It's National Register of Historic Places, Cultural Records Program. A huge one is the Federal Consultation Program, where, you know, if they're building new roads or drilling or doing other things, they contact us and we work with them on it. Certified Local Government Program, the popular Centennial Farm and Ranch Program, monuments and markers, those thousands of markers you see when you're driving along the road. Office of State Archaeologist, Education Outreach, I could go on forever. But that is going to actually be a very big public process too. There's going to be surveys, and I will make sure that they get sent to you all in case you are interested. There's workshops, there's public meetings. We're going to go through a huge public process and work to refine that and kind of bring that back down together. And Madam Chairman, I would stand for any questions, and if not, I would punt to Chris to give a few more updates.
Any questions for Director Glenn? Okay, go ahead, Deputy.
Madam Chair, thank you. I want to just say one more time, appreciate you all being at the tour today, and I hope you had a good time. I know it was kind of like the one at Buffalo Bill. We drove around, talked a lot. You got to see some pretty cool things and hear from our staff. One thing that was repeated over and over again, and it's really at the heart of what we do, is partnerships and collaboration. I think it was mentioned probably a dozen times, the partnerships that the staff out at EKW has with the local community and with federal and state and local governments, doing good things. They're really force multipliers, because you've got, you know, only 2 permanent staff out there and some seasonals, but with all their partnerships and everything, they can have a huge impact. And so it was great to hear them talk about all that. And of course, when I see the enthusiasm and energy of the superintendent out there, Lindley Mayer, I just think as long as we can hire and retain people like that, we're going to be okay. They did a great job, and they're doing great work. A couple of quick updates. So, and Patrick mentioned this earlier, and this is really something that his office leads the charge on, and they have been for several years, and that's the Wyoming Governor's Match, which is here in Casper. It's been here for a few years now. It moved around the state before that, but it's, you know, an event that basically reflects our continuing commitment to not only the Second Amendment, but also safe and responsible gun ownership, and also shooting sports as outdoor recreation, which we consider that to be the case in Wyoming. So we're happy to be putting that event on again this year, working with the Stuckenhoff shooting complex here in town. And the Casper Shooters Club is a partner with that. Again, another partnership to be able to do something like this. There's over 200 participants from around the country who come to that event. So you can think of what the impact of that is economically over a long weekend for this city of Casper and the state of Wyoming. And we hope that they'll see a lot of Wyoming while they're here. That event is Friday afternoon, July 19th, so next Friday afternoon, and it goes all day Saturday, and it goes Sunday morning. The governor's going to be there Friday afternoon around 2, and at noon on Saturday, there's going to be a legislative forum and a luncheon, and there will also be an opportunity for a little bit of shooting activity for those of you who are so inclined, if you can make it. So we hope that you'll come out for that. We typically have some kind of competition between the states. Sometimes representatives from other states show up, and there's a little bit of a fun shootout there to see who can do the best. So we hope Wyoming wins that this year. Another thing I want to update you guys about, and this is some good news, and we've got a lot of good news, but here's some more. You probably heard of the Helmsley Charitable Trust, the Helmsley Foundation. They provided us $1.9 million in grants for 3 different projects we've got going on in our state parks. One of them was the Guernsey Civilian Conservation Corps Bridge, which was completed a few years ago. We received $200,000 for that project from Helmsley. Most recently, the Medicine Lodge Educational Center up at Med Lodge in Hyattville, up in the Bighorn Basin. That was recently completed. It's open to the public. It's an immersive interpretive experience. I highly recommend you take a look at that if you get a chance. I believe Representative Winter was there. Thank you, sir, for being there. Wonderful learning opportunity there. You walk into it and you're kind of taken back in time into different eras. It's something you wouldn't necessarily expect when you see the red barn that it's housed in. When you go in, it's very technologically advanced. It's really impressive. So we received $600,000 for that project, and that's already very popular. The one that's in the works right now for $1.1 million is the Fort Phil Kearny Interpretive Center. And that's, in progress right now. That should be completed by this fall. They're in the midst of construction. They're essentially adding on to the old interpretive center, which was, really small. This new one's going to give us an opportunity to better tell that important story. So we're really thankful to have the support of a private partner like Helmsley. Their focus, and they focus in a lot of areas, but one thing is rural health. And so that's how we were able to make the connection there. We hope to be able to partner with them more in the future and just show the impact that their donations are having to the state of Wyoming, to our public health, to our cultural resources and our interpretive programming and all the various economic impacts that come along with that. So that's my update.
Any questions for the director or the deputy director? Just one thing, I'm kind of, since you brought it up, I know the co-chair and I have talked about this before, that we'd be interested, I think, in a tour of Quebec. And so you put that on the radar for us in the fall, and if it works out, we'd love to do that.
Madam Chairwoman, we'll make it happen. We'd love to host you.
And thanks again. I mean, that's the most fun about the TRW committee, is we get to go and tour parks and museums and things that you guys are in charge of, that a lot of us have never been to. Just like today, I had never been to Edna's Kimball Wilkins. I've gone past the sign, had no idea where it was, and it was awesome. And I'll be sure and pass that on to some of my folks that travel I-25. So thanks again for that. Yes, go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Well, Madam Chair, real quick, along those lines, Director, I just want to thank State Parks. The Tribal Relations Committee toured Sinks Canyon because we're looking at how to better protect pictographs and petroglyphs, more commonly lumped together as rock art or rock imagery. And so they did a great job of taking us around. And so also a heads up to this committee that we're looking at those statutes that might provide some protection. They're pretty dated. And so the state archaeologists and some others have been really helpful in giving us feedback. So I'm guessing if those bills advance, they'll come through TRW. So just a heads up to other committee members for the next session that might be something you'll be looking at.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions for the director? Okay, thanks again for the updates. With that, I guess we'll move on to our first bill draft for this afternoon, and I think Emily's going to come and present that, and I'm sure that we'll need some backup again from our state parks folks, so don't go too far. This is LSO 0061, State Park Peace Officer Definition and Scope of Authority. Looks like you brought your backup too, Emily, right? So tell us all about this bill and what you want us to know about it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Emily Wangan, Legislative Service Office, Legal Division Intern, walking you through 25 LSO 0061 State Park Peace Officers Definition and Scope of Authority. The version you have before you is version 0.3 and is material number 1301 in your packet. So this was requested at the last meeting following testimony from the State Parks Department and amends the definition of a peace officer to remove jurisdictional limitations for park rangers. It's modeled off of 2024 House Bill 179 with some additional changes requested by the state parks and a conforming amendment in Section 1 that I will go over. So Section 1 amends several sections to remove the limitations on when state park superintendents or park rangers are considered peace officers. It also expands the definition to include district managers and reserve park rangers at the request of the chief park ranger. So the staff comment on pages 2 and going on to 3 just explains what those positions are, provides a little background, and notes that the committee may wish to consider whether it would like to define those terms. I just did a quick look right before I went up, and it doesn't look like superintendent or the other positions are defined in statute, but if the committee would wish to do that, be certainly happy to do so. It's important to note that the people serving in these positions must be post-certified in order to be considered peace officers. So a district manager may not be post-certified, and they would not count as a peace officer under this because they do not have the required training. And so this change is made in multiple sections, including in 35.7.1002. This was one that was not in the previous version of the bill, but was added to conform with the rest of the changes being made throughout the statutes. And another part of the committee's request, looking at the staff comment on page 5, was to change instances of law enforcement officer to peace officer when referencing park rangers. But in this instance, the definition of law enforcement officers differs from the definition of peace officers used throughout statutes. And the committee may wish to leave that as is to avoid any confusion. Section 2 provides an effective date of July 1. It should say 2025, and that will get changed. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Questions for Emily or Lucas, either one, from LSO on this bill draft?
Madam Chairman.
I think Madam Co-Chair has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Co-Chairman. I was trying to look up, because it says on page 3 that qualified pursuant to 91701 to 91707, and I was trying to look that up and seeing if we needed to add something in those statutes to add these people or not. And I'm not quick enough on the draw to get to those statutes right now.
Yeah.
You're probably quicker than I am looking it up on yours. I had a book. See, they've got a book. So 91701 and 91707.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just,
go ahead,
just
Lucas.
looking at this briefly, so this is discussing the Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission post, and it's really just kind of the language that sets out, the requirements, the membership for the board. If I recall correctly, I don't think that there would be need for conforming amendments here. It's just the standards by which any peace officer is required to be qualified, that post certification. And it's just, it's essentially just the peace officer training portion, but we could definitely review that.
So I finally found it, and there's the first part, 91701, is definitions. So I'm wondering that you mentioned that we didn't define those positions, if they would need to be defined in here or not.
Madam
Mr.
Chairwoman.
Plum?
Just briefly, so throughout this, they use the term peace officer generally, which, defines back to 72101. And so it just includes all the people who are defined as peace officers, that they have to be part of this training. So I think that definition is somewhat inclusive, yes.
Other questions on the bill draft? Just one that I had, and it might have to be Parks and Rec that answer this, I'm not sure. The reserve park ranger that's mentioned in here, do you have any of those? Do you use those very often? Oh, there we go. Law enforcement's here. They can tell us a little bit about them. I have some assumptions about what they do, but I'd sure like to hear from you. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Madam Chair, Mark Coughlin, I'm the Chief Ranger with State Parks. We do have reserve peace officers or reserve park rangers. They have the same requirements as any of our rangers do as far as training and continuing training, advanced training, post-training. They're considered the same as we are.
I assume that they're probably just used at the bigger parks, maybe where you have more action, Guernsey and some of those kinds of things. But again, just wondering on that.
Their main duty is to supplement our staff in our parks, yes.
Okay. Other questions?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just
Yes, go ahead.
to briefly, I think Emily did a fantastic job of going through the bill. In that she included the kind of just some information about, a district manager or reserve park ranger. This is just including it within the definition of peace officer, and some of these other, like a superintendent is not defined. So it'd be the committee's discretion if you'd like to have it defined, but that's not been the standard case within these definitions of peace officers. And similarly, within Title 35, this is more of the drug enforcement piece where that term is used as law enforcement officer, but that does include sheriffs, municipal policemen, and then just also includes the same language for park rangers. And so that's why that was included in this one as well. So just to clarify that a little bit more.
And just to follow up on that, I doubt that you have any superintendents or assistant superintendents that ever go through post-training. Is that correct? Or would I just be assuming that?
Madam Chair, some of our district managers like Brooks Jordan and a couple of our superintendents, assistant superintendents are peace officers, been through that training. That's our option. It helps us give us more capacity to do law enforcement, public safety in our parks.
And again, as long as they've gone through that post-training, they're good to go.
Yes, they do need to meet the state standards like any peace officer would in the state.
Other questions? Gosh, I think everyone ate so much at lunch that we're having a hard time coming up with, moving our brains a little bit. But no, great job on that, Emily, and we'll take a look at this, and I guess we have other questions we'll ask, but appreciate the update. Okay. Do we have any public testimony on this bill? Okay, we do. Oh, Mr. Thompson's here. We'd love to hear from you. Please introduce yourself, even though we know who you are.
Hello, Madam Chair. My name is Alan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of WASCOP, the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. I just wanted to let the committee know that we've been visiting with and helping communicate across the state with our sheriffs and chiefs, with the chief ranger about this, alleviating any concerns. We talked about some of the policy direction coming from the office should this bill pass as written, and based on those and squaring those, any of those concerns, our association has no concern with the bill as written today. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair.
Questions for Mr. Thompson? I just had one, and it was mainly, and when I read the bill the first time, actually, I thought about this. How does this affect retirement in terms of, I mean, I know retirement for the state is maybe a little different than it is for peace officers. Do you see any issues there? Does one, trump the other? I don't know.
Madam Chair, I'm not even sure which retirement plan the Rangers are in, but this doesn't address that at all. Either they are or they aren't.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, it looks like somebody might know the answer to that question. Go ahead.
And Madam Chair, currently our rangers are underneath the law enforcement retirement plan, so there'd be no change there.
Okay. I kind of assumed that, but that was just a question I had, so great. Director Glenn might have something more even to add, so.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to clarify that piece. These are our full-time law enforcement rangers that Mark is talking about, so it's 5. If you're a superintendent, you are not in that retirement program. Or if you're a district manager, you're not in that retirement. It's a full-time police officers. Thank you.
Okay. I think Representative Western has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Because I believe Highway Patrol is in their own separate retirement pot, if you will. So are the Rangers in the same one as municipal law enforcement as well as county? Or are they in their own, are they with the Highway Patrols?
Madam Chair, Representative Western, they're within the normal law enforcement retirement plan. The Highway Patrol, Game Wardens, DCI have a separate retirement fund.
Follow up? Anyone? No? Anyone online? I mean, I was wondering if Representative Storer, do you have any questions? I see you're still with us. No? Okay. Anyone on the other end here? Okay, great. I don't have any other questions, so with that, appreciate your testimony. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? And we don't have anyone online? Okay, good. With that, we'll close public testimony then, and committee, what are your thoughts on this bill? Move the bill. Move the bill. We got a motion and a second. Let's have some discussion on it. Any discussion or any changes or any amendments? Yes, go ahead, Representative Burkhart.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I would propose an amendment that we change the effective date to immediate upon passage. My logic for that, if I can get a second, I'll explain. Okay.
Second.
Madam Chair, if this takes effect July 1st, we've in effect put the rangers in a position of halfway through the summer, they work under one criteria, the other half they work under a different criteria. And I'm thinking specifically in my own district, the main access to Seminole Reservoir is a highway from Sinclair to Seminole. The number of accidents on that highway, the problems that are out there that occur in the summer, starting even before Memorial Day, and then they carry through the summer. I would just like to see them be able to respond to a highway accident or some other event out there without having to call the sheriff's office for permission to do that, to be able to immediately respond for the benefit of the public. So that's my logic for changing it to effective immediately. Plus, there's no money involved. It's merely allowing them to work beyond the state parks, which is normal for law enforcement anywhere. So I don't think there's a major impact to doing that.
Other discussions on the amendment? Other comments? Okay, with that, let's vote on the amendment. Oh, go ahead, Senator.
Madam Chair, my only concern, Madam Chair, is just the administrative preparing for it. I don't know if they need to be logged in a certain way in a system or something like that, where having it at least, I wouldn't mind changing the date to maybe May 1st or something, but I am a little curious about anytime you change someone's authority, like just needing some time to get that effectuated. So maybe it's a question, I guess, if we could get a response. And then a good catch by the bringer of the amendment, though, right now the draft has 2024, so regardless, it would need to be 2025 if it weren't, if we don't adopt the amendment.
Any of our law enforcement have an answer for that question? Go ahead, either one of you, whoever wants to speak first.
Madam Chair, Alan Thompson with WASCOP. I can't think of any requirement or system. It would just maybe be a policy issue within the organization. But as far as a component on the state level or lawful side of things, I mean, I don't know if this is acceptable, but maybe even saying a 2-week time period after all, signature by the governor, whatever it may be, to make this effective. But I can't think of anything that would hold that up.
And Madam Chair, Mark Coughlin, Chief Ranger, we would just need a time to make sure that policy that we complete would be in effect, because that's important to the passage of this bill. If we had that preloaded ahead of time with the AG's office, once they signed it, once the governor signed it, I don't see any issues for us not moving forward with the bill.
So would you say that maybe waiting 2 weeks would be a better way to go, or do you have any thoughts on the amendment at all? Or is immediate something? Oh, you got something. Go ahead, Co-Chair. Madam Co-Chair.
I think generally, correct me if I'm wrong, I think most of the immediate inaction clauses say at the completion of all the whatever needs to happen.
All necessary acts for bill. And Madam Chairman, all the bills go through an AG review. The governor will not sign off of them until they do, so that's why it says all acts necessary to become law. And I don't see much change other than Chief Hoffman, if he knew of a vehicle accident, wouldn't have to call the local sheriff, he could just respond. I don't see any downside, but I want to give them the ability to be able to handle next year's tourist season without having to wait midway. That one day, the 30th of June, they can't, they have to get permission, and the 1st of July, they can. So that's my only logic, was to give them the opportunity and to expand our law enforcement capabilities prior to July 1st.
Any other comments or questions for our law enforcement? Okay, Thank you for the clarification. It all helps. All right, with that, if there's no more discussion on the amendment, all those in favor of Representative Burkhart's amendment to make this immediate, please say aye. 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 Opposed, no? Okay, so that is passed. Other amendments on this bill or other changes or tweaks? Anyone else has? Okay, question's been called. So with that, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Heather?
This is a roll call vote for 25 LSO 61, State Park Peace Officer definition and scope of authority as amended. Senator Baldwin excused. Senator Ellis? Aye. Senator Garou?
Aye.
Senator Jones? Aye. Representative Angelos? Representative Burkhart?
Aye.
Representative Byron?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative Singh?
No.
Representative Storer?
Aye.
Representative Western? No. Representative Winter? No. Co-Chairman Newsom?
Aye.
Chairman Schuler?
Aye.
That passes.
Okay, the bill passes. All right. Moving on then to our last bill draft. This is LSO, 25 LSO-0060. And I think, Emily, you're going to present this again? All right. And your backup plan there, Mr. Plum? Come on down. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Emily Wongan, Legislative Service Office. This is 25 LSO 0060, Working Draft 0.4, and it's material number 1302 in your packet. This bill increases the annual registration fee for private and commercial resident snowmobiles and increases the annual snowmobile user fee for non-residents. It increases the annual fee intended for private use from $50 to from $35. Commercial snowmobiles is increased to $150 from $105, and the annual snowmobile user fee for non-residents will be changed to $70 from $35. And Section 2 provides an effective date of July 1, 2025. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Emily or Lucas? This is one of those short bills that, you always worry about when you say this is a short bill. It hasn't got a lot of changes. And those are the ones that seem to drag on and take forever, but it doesn't look like we have anyone that has any questions. I know we had some good testimony when we were in Park County from folks that are actually snowmobile people, and they seem to be okay with the idea of increasing it. Oh, Senator Jones. I was kind of waiting for her. She is a snowmobiler, so.
Madam Chair, I just want to say that my snowmobile club is definitely in favor of the user increase. We like to think we're responsible in using the trails, and we want to make sure the money is in place in order to do that.
I do know that it was mentioned again by our Parks and Rec folks that obviously with the inflation, price of gas, just the price of everything going up, that they weren't being able to keep pace. I don't think the increase in fees had happened for 20-ish years, 20, 25 years. So it's been a long time since there's been an increase in fees. And I think I asked the question up there about how much a typical snow machine runs, and my husband never ever told me when he bought one, so I didn't know how much they cost. But now that I found out how much they cost, I don't think this is a really, exorbitant fee. That's just me. So if there's no other questions or comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, just a quick one. Does LSO have like a spreadsheet of all the fees that we charge and kind of the last date? I'm just wondering if we generally keep track of, the last time we changed this fee was 1972, last time we changed this fee was 1980, like, if we can just start looking at old, that would be just a question if you know of that existing.
Mr. Plum?
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, I was just looking back to our research folks. I'm not aware of a list that has that is exhaustive of all the fees that we charge. And I mean, yeah, it could be interesting, but no, I think generally, it just is piecemeal when we look at these specifically. And I'm not sure the last time these were changed, unless you looked at it. Yeah, don't know off the top of our heads, but we can try and find it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly not a suggestion and not a request on my end. I don't want to make more work for you, but for someone who likes spreadsheets like I do.
I think Representative Burkhart, did you have your hand up?
Madam Chair, thank you. Two things. I have a number of spreadsheets with various fees on them. I'm glad to share if I can ever find them. The second one is the fees for snowmobiles were last changed in 2013. So just.
Other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, LSO. Thank you, Emily and Lucas. Appreciate it. We'll go ahead and open this up for public testimony on this bill draft. Anyone from the public? Bert and Brenda, no? Okay. Wait, you said everything you wanted to say in Cody. Okay, great. And thank you for your testimony up there. That was helpful. So, no one online? Oh, there is somebody online. Okay, sure. Maybe. Change their mind. Okay. With that, then we'll go ahead and close public testimony. Excuse me, close public testimony. I can't talk today. Committee, what are your thoughts on this bill? Move the bill.
Second.
You can still
I just had a
talk.
statement, sorry. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
we just still need a second. Okay, we got our second, so now, go ahead, Senator Jones.
And I'm wondering if this could be incorporated in part of this bill, but I've had people reach out to me about like some sort of a lifetime tag for vintage snowmobiles. It's become increasingly popular over the years that people have them, they have events, they have races, but it's not really, you don't ride a 25 or 35-year-old snowmobile just on the trails. So I'm wondering if that is something that we could incorporate. I don't know if maybe somebody could say if that was something we could add to this bill.
Looks like maybe Mr. Kaminga and Mr. Floyd might have some thoughts on that. Come on up.
Madam Chair, Senator Jones, we did do a little bit of research into that. And when I say we, I mean Forrest. And he looked into the legislation for antique motor vehicles, which is YDOT Title 31-2-223. 31-2-223, and they have a little bit of criteria there for how they do automobiles, and you could probably pull something very similar from that for snowmobiles. Forrest, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Forrest Kaminga, Wyoming State Trails Program Manager. I have been in contact with several snowmobilers throughout the state. They've presented this question to us. One of the main questions tied to it is, what kind of impact do you think this would have on your program and the revenue brought in by just regular registration prices? You know, I don't think it'll necessarily have a huge issue on our operational funds that we bring in, because this is a very tight niche group. And I think if we word it correctly and essentially mirror it similar to how how YDOT issues the Pioneer plates for the, you know, the classic cars that just attend car shows and, you know, maybe go on auto tours occasionally once a season, twice a season, something like that. I think it's manageable and very doable and could be managed within the program.
Yes, go ahead, Sarah. Yeah, Madam Chair, I mean, I think we could go one of two ways. If we wanted to go down the path of amending this bill and trying to come up with the particulars of it, I don't feel comfortable doing it on the fly. I'd rather, you know, rethink the motion. Maybe the bringer would withdraw their motion, and then we have another amendment and look at it at our next meeting. But if we want to proceed with it, I think that they are definitely two separate subjects. I could see where somebody supports the idea of a vintage registration, but rejects this or vice versa. So just some things to think about. But if we want to go down that path, I don't want to vote on it on the fly right now today.
Okay. Would this be something maybe Senator Jones, you might want to bring as an individual bill? Yeah, just a thought. Yeah. Yeah, we can amend it now if you'd like, but it's up to you guys. If not, you'd rather proceed? Okay. Yeah. Other options then? Or other amendments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Maybe maybe we could just ask LSO to maybe plug that similar language in as an amendment for the next meeting. just kind of make conforming language that would make it make sense in this statute, and then we could look at it at the next meeting, and if we like it, we can add it into the bill. If not, we can just pass the bill as is.
Senator Ellis?
Madam Chair, maybe it'd be appropriate to ask, do a straw poll of, do we want to move forward right now, or do we want to lay this back and maybe have another amendment to look at for the next meeting? I certainly don't want to tell you what to do, but
We can certainly do that.
I don't know that there's consensus.
Okay. How many of you would like to go ahead and just move the bill forward in its original form right now? Raise your hand, please. Okay, 3. How many would like to lay it back and then add an amendment for next time and go from there? 2, 3. Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
So I withdraw my motion to move this bill. And
Okay.
if
All right.
Representative Western would withdraw his second.
Are you okay with that? Okay. All right. They've withdrawn their motion, so we'll go ahead then. I guess we do need a motion then to lay it back and have LSO add some language in there. So do we have a motion from someone for that? Okay. Is there a second? Okay. We've got a motion and a second to lay it back, add information in there about the lifetime tag or that sort of thing, that language. Any discussion on that? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think that, is there any clear line, gentlemen, on when the Pioneer plate, is there a date on it? I mean, I think we're talking about, it's 2024, and I would look to my colleague in the Senate from the wonderful southwest corner. Some of these vintage snowmobiles are pre-2000, 2005. I mean, a lot of these things become obsolete quite quickly. I don't want to get in the weeds here because I think we're going down the right path to push this back, but I don't know, the bringer of the motion, Representative Singh, I'm not sure if there's a date you want to say where we delineate vintage, or if that's something we could work through, maybe some of the YDOT stuff, but Senator Jones, I'd love to know your kind of take on what that date would be.
Mr. Kaminga, do you have any idea on what would be a vintage snowmobile?
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative Byron. What we've come up with is about 25 years. So that'd be pre-2000. And if you wouldn't, or I could read kind of maybe a couple bullet points I put together, kind of maybe that the draft amendment could be based off of. And this is a machine must be 25 to 30 years old. 25 is kind of the general consensus out there for with the vintage clubs that are out there. The machine, if it was based off of the Pioneer plate that YDOT provides, they strictly only allow Wyoming residents to apply for those plates. But I think it would be worthwhile for us to consider non-residents to apply for those as well. And the reason I say that is because it could attract vintage events to the state of Wyoming, which would be kind of a whole nother revenue, an economic driver to the state. If they could buy a permanent registration for, say, someone that lives in Minnesota that has 30 of these things laying around in a museum, and put them in a trailer and bring them to Wyoming and show them off on our trails for a weekend, it'd definitely be an economic driver. So that would be where I would veer away from what the Pioneer plate stipulations are. Like you said, then definitely put some wording in there that says this machine is going to solely be operated for vintage events or races. So I think what I drafted was, machine is owned and operated solely for the purposes of organized vintage snowmobile shows, club activities, rides, parades, tours, and other vintage-related activities or events. The machine will not be used for general snowmobile uses. So we can avoid those, those riders out there that do have an older machine that they use on a every weekend basis and just are going to utilize this as a loophole.
Yes, go ahead, Deputy.
Madam Chair, and the language Forrest just quoted, that's not quite word for word from the YDOT legislation 31.2223, but it's basically you're just changing out the word automobile for snow machine. So that's the kind of language that's already out there, distinguishing between the vintage activities versus general use.
And
Someone down here have a question, comment?
then, Madam Chair, if I could add one more thing to that. The last recommendation I'd make is to build in there that these would be an electronic application built into our new electronic sales platform that is soon to be launched. But these are reviewed internally on a case-by-case basis, so it isn't just an automatic permit that will be handed out. We'll review them to make sure that they're legit.
Great. Madam Co-Chair?
So thank you for that information. Have you contemplated a price? And as part of the application process, would they need to like take a picture of their, I don't know if snowmobiles have a VIN or if they would need to somehow verify that the sled is the sled?
Yep. Yep, Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair, I came up with a $25 fee that would cover, the expense of the printing of the vintage decal. And then also we would require a proof of ownership of the vintage machine. A lot of pre-2000 machines didn't actually necessarily come with a title. So it would be, some sort of picture, some sort of bill of sale, something that, whatever they could come up with, to prove the ownership of it.
Other questions or comments? Okay, great. LSO, I think that you get lots of information on how we could adapt this bill. Yes, go ahead, Madam
So
Co-Chair.
just one more question. Is the tag lifetime to the machine or lifetime to the person?
Good question. Mr. Kaminga?
Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair, the way the Pioneer plate reads is soon as the exchange in ownership, it becomes obsolete. So the new owner would have to purchase another registration for it.
Other questions? Okay, great. So you guys are good to go then with, yes, Mr. Plum?
Madam Chair, yes, I think that'll work, and we'll definitely reach out to State Parks and try and get that done for the next meeting.
Great, super.
And Madam Chair, if I just ask, would you prefer like a separate amendment, or would you like us to incorporate this into the bill draft?
Personally, I think if we can just adapt it into the bill draft, I think that would be better.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Someone else have a comment? I keep thinking I see hands, but maybe it's just me thinking. Oh, Representative Winter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. For some reason, I'm kind of confused here. That's probably not. I thought we was talking about a lifetime permit here and not a Pioneer. How come this Pioneer thing came up?
I believe that someone over here, I think Senator Ellis brought it up.
It seemed like it should be
You think it should be a
one or
lifetime?
the other.
Go ahead, Mr. Kamiga. You want to clarify that?
Yep, Madam Chair, Representative Winter, this was a kind of, this is based off of how YDOT issues the Pioneer plates for their, the classic cars, and you see running around town with I think it's a white and black color scheme on the back of it, and they issue them. It's a $10 one-time fee, application fee, and then they issue these plates. Because of the interest that we've had from the snowmobile community for a vintage registration for a classic or vintage snow machine, that's where we kind of came up with the wording for a permanent registration on these machines.
Yes, follow up? Go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you, but it seems to me that it should be one or the other, and I think we could do it in this bill, but should either be a Pioneer license for a vintage machine versus a lifetime for whoever wants to snowmobile out there from now on. I just seem like it ought to be separated out.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Kaminga or Deputy Director?
Madam Chair, Representative Winter, I guess I'm, the kind of the baseline is there's a lot of these vintage snowmobilers out there that, dust these machines off for one weekend to one weekend a season and pull them out. So it was one of those, they're addressing the concern that, right now, per state statute, what it requires them to do is it requires them to purchase the full $35 registration in order to utilize our snowmobile trails and be legal doing so. And they feel that's a little bit excessive, an excessive fee for that 1 weekend a season that they go out and use them. So I don't feel it would be detrimental to our operations if we were to allow anyone in the general snowmobiler to buy a permanent registration for their machine.
And just to follow up on that, most of your lifetime tags, for instance, if you're hunting, they're quite expensive. And don't you have to meet certain qualifications? You have to be so old and so on and so forth. So I think this is a little bit different. It could be a young person that has a vintage machine, correct? And so it'd just be a cheaper decal. And, maybe it's a 15-year-old that's riding great grandpa's snow machine. He doesn't have to be 65 or 55 or whatever. So I think that might be the distinction. I think that's basically what Representative Winter's asking. I'm hoping that that's what he's asking, but yeah, so. Yes, go ahead, Senator Jones.
This is still a user fee. That's why I did think it was pertinent to this bill. We're trying to give a user fee to the people with the vintage sleds because they're not out there every single weekend on a vintage sled. So this would be a limited use, but it's still a user fee.
Good point.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Representative Burkhardt.
Madam Chairman, I think we need to exercise some caution here. There are 25-year-old machines that'll still do over 100 miles an hour. These are not what I think everybody has in their mind of just old machines. They're older, but that 25-year cutoff date was when all the true high-performance machines started coming in. So I think we need to exercise some caution, and I understand you can only use them for special things. But I see people running around all the time with antique plates on their cars and trucks, and they just do it again to get around the cost of licensing them. And then plus you have to remember who's going to police the usage. I mean, I one time in history have I seen anyone in the mountains policing snowmobile registration. And frankly, what they're being bought for machines, most of the machines out there can outrun them easily. So just some caution on this whole concept.
So maybe we ought to take a look at Representative Burkhardt into moving it further back, maybe a 30 or 40-year-old machine. I don't know.
I think Madam Chairman, I think we need to, I think it's a great idea, but I think we need to understand where we're going and what it gets us. Because I think you'll have people who really get call it one-time pioneer license, whatever you want to call it, and just go and ride. I mean, that's human nature.
Good point. Other comments or questions? Representative Byron?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We do have pretty good enforcement in my neck of the woods, and we are often checked. So I obviously think that's a jurisdictional issue, and I do like Representative Burkhardt's idea of maybe using the 30-year that the gentlemen have proposed or at least chatted about. That takes us back to quick public school math, late 90s, mid 90s, I guess. So, I think Representative Burkhardt brings up a good point, but there's going to be exceptions to all these rules, right? I mean, there's going to be, let's not go down that rabbit hole right now in discussion, but a lot of the places these sleds are going, your 30-year-old sled will not be joining them. Maybe it can go 100 miles an hour, but I think Mr. Kamingas can attest to this. If you go up on Togedy on a Saturday, maybe they have one and maybe they buzz around on it real quick for fun, but they don't have turbos. They're not long tracked, and they may be fast, but they're not going to be, I don't see it as big of an issue, but I do like that idea of maybe going to 30 years.
Yes, Senator Jones?
Madam Chair, my family and I snowmobile in a lot of different locations across the state, and we have been checked numerous times for for our tags. So it does happen on a regular occasion, and a lot of times, maybe not every single sled is checked, but they do have enforcement sitting in the parking lots. And I have actually seen people leave and go purchase tags and come back, just by seeing an enforcement person there.
Other comments? Okay. In that case, I guess we're at that point where you have a pretty good idea, maybe put 25, 30, whatever you think. I think 30 sounds more important. So, but, yeah, Representative Byron, one more thing?
Just point of clarity here, I believe we have to probably vote on that motion to lay it back.
Yeah, we probably do. So, do you want to go with the 30, or no, I can't make the motion. Somebody else want to make the motion? We're laying the bill back, yeah.
And give us some direction also. So yeah, I think that, I think we have
Yeah, we have to have a motion on that.
movement in a
Yeah.
second, so.
To lay it back?
To lay it back, is it a roll call vote or just a voice?
It's just a voice vote? Okay. And I don't know who made the motion, I don't remember to lay it back. Daniel? And we had a second back there. Okay, let's go ahead then and vote on laying the bill back and turning LSO loose with some of the recommendations that we've talked about. All those in favor of doing that, please say aye. 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 Those opposed, no? Okay, that has passed. We'll lay that bill back, and we'll take another look at it when we come back in Cheyenne. And the dates of that, I believe, are September 30th and October 1st. So thank you again, everyone, for your presence, for your testimony, State Parks, and thanks for being here. And again, thanks for the tour today. For the good of the order, I guess we will adjourn.